Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. That's Ian Duke. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. We're ready to head down to the feature match where we've got Nathan Holiday and Shuhei Nakamura. I can tell you that every player down in the feature match area are 5-0 in the drafts, and that's as many wins as you could have at this point. So let's hold down for round number 11 here from Atlanta. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ian Duke. We're ready for round 11. And let's head down and check out Nathan Holiday here. Now, everybody in the feature match area this round are 5-0 in draft. Every player selected here have not lost in the booster draft portion of our event. His opponent, Yowza, Shuhei Nakamura, the Hall of Famer from Japan. Now, both of these players are 8-2. And ready to rumble here in round number 11. So let's get things going as these players try to keep themselves in a good position heading into the modern portion, which is coming up after this round.
Yeah, and this should be a pretty cool match here, Marshall. We actually have two of the less common color pair combinations in Oath of the Gatewatch here this weekend. Black-green out of Nathan Holiday and white-blue from Shuhei Nakamura.
All right, let's see what we can do here. Here's, Anticipate. I haven't seen that in a while. For Shuhei. And it's going to be a benthic infiltrator to kick things off here for Shuhei as he passes the turn back. That's the first board-affecting play of the game, so things off to a little slow start for these players. There's Nathan Holiday. Nathan's going to run out a Warden of Geometry. So not exactly a bang-up start here from Nathan's side of the table. A turn 4 Warden of Geometry's, not the most exciting. But hey, could unlock some pretty powerful stuff for next turn. Looks like a Thought Harvester is the follow-up here for Nakamura. Looking pretty good here. Nice little 3 into 4 there for Shuhei.
Little vigilant attack there with a quick block from Shuhei.
Shuhei having none of it.
Nathan Holiday's deck is looking pretty cool here. He's kind of like a black-green ramp deck almost, from what I see here in his list. So
what kind of top-end stuff are we talking about here, Ian?
Well, notably, there's a copy of Void Winnower, which would be a pretty exciting one to see.
He went real big.
And yeah, it looks like he actually has that in his hand right now. So yeah, Birthing Hulk and Void Winnower being some...
Wow, that was a nice
drops.
one there for Nathan. Did you see that? He just played Transgress the Mind and got Eldrazi Displacer with it.
Oh, that's great.
Shuhei Nakamura deciding to be more mana efficient here. And he leaves the opening for hand disruption, and you get some good.
Yeah, and it looks like Shuhei even has a Hedron Crawler in his hand. So he would have had Hedron Crawler plus Displacer next turn, and the Displacer would be on. And that card is really tough to deal with when it's online, Marshall.
Yeah. One of the better rares in the set. So Shuhei's going to be a little bummed about that. But here's Grave Birthing now. Main phase for Nathan Holiday. Produces him a Scion, and he draws a card off of it as well. In the meantime, Shuhei's going to attack with the Thought Harvester and the benthic Infiltrator. He's going to trigger Ingest. And just play the Hedron Crawler. It is a colorless spell, so it's going to trigger the Harvester. And he's got a follow-up play here with a Cultivator Drone as well. So that's going to trigger that a second time.
So Shuhei actually doing a fair amount of exiling here. You know, I've heard a lot of players sort of bemoaning the fact that it's hard to get the ingest and process theme online with Oath of the Gatewatch, not having those mechanics, but it's definitely still possible. I have seen it quite a bit. It's just a little more difficult to assemble now.
Holiday working through his options. It's going to be an eyeless watcher. I mean, he is setting up for something huge here, potentially. He's got a lot of mana available now.
Yeah, looks like 8 mana available on board for next turn. And, you know, if he hits a land, that's Void Windwear mana.
That's right. That's 9. Look at his hand. He's got an Essence Depleter, a Vile Redeemer, an Attendant. There's a Birthing Hulk, and he does, in fact, have the Void Winnower in hand. Are we going to see this thing hit the table?
Yeah, it's possible.
He's got nice top end here. Birthing Hulk's also really impressed me. And Essence Depleter is a fine place to dump a bunch of mana, too. So Nathan Holiday setting up to go over the top in the next couple of turns here, but Shuhei's the one who's applying pressure.
Shuhei picked up a copy of Tandem Tactics there. It's going to give him a little more flexibility in combat.
Again, all of our players in the feature match area here are on 5-0 in draft coming into this round, including Marcio Carvalho, who just won his first game against Alex Bianchi. Both players are 6-4 overall, so had a rougher time in Modern, but have been doing really well in Limited here. And it looks like Shuhei's decided to attack with all 3 here. And Nathan's just going to double block. And there's that Tandem Tactics. Another update, Frank Lepore is up a game over Bartolome Lewandowski. He's up a game. So they're both at 9-1.
So that's a big deal there. Tandem Tactics allows Shuhei to take out the Warden of Geometries. That's going to set Nathan significantly back on mana production and keep things like Void Winnower in check a little bit longer.
But Nathan can still cast a Birthing Hulk here if he wants.
What's up? Your 2 cards under the tactics should still be exiled.
Back to from
Yeah.
yeah, he forgot to this ability.
Yep.
They're both exiled, right? This exiled?
Oh yeah.
And then this exiled?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got that sorted out. What's exiled and what's not, just making sure.
Yeah.
All right, so he's going to sacrifice all 3 of his Scions and just tap out here for Birthing Hulk, which resolves netting him 2 Scions back again. And Birthing Hulk is big.
Yeah, normally a card that's really tough for a ground attack deck to bust through, but Shuhei with some evasion here is just going to keep sailing past Nathan Holiday's blockers.
All right, everybody's in.
I'll let you know when I'm done.
But Shuhei's having none of it. He's just jamming with the team here, looking to get Nathan Holiday dead as soon as possible. So Nathan Holiday falls down to 9 as Shuhei trades off some board presence here for some damage.
Looks like a Sears Lantern there, the draw.
For Holiday?
Yeah. Not a
Well-
huge amount of help.
No, he needs to just stick around here. Right? I mean, look at his hand.
Yeah, his hand is super powerful. Unfortunately, he's getting clogged up with mana acceleration cards, but missing his land drops. And under the
Right.
pressure from Shuhei, he's just not able to get that traction he needs to get up to those big spells like Void Winnower.
See that Nathan Holiday has 2 copies of Hissing Quagmire in his deck. Pretty nice. And there's going to be a natural connection. Okay. So Sears Lantern block natural connection means that Nathan is working his way up the mana chain here pretty efficiently. He actually added 2 mana just that turn. He is taking more damage though.
Yeah, and he did have to sacrifice his Scion to do it. So, again, he's kind of treading water, unfortunately, with his mana here, rather than building up in the way that he wants to. And unfortunately, I
Negator.
don't see a lot in his hand that can really help him too much out of this situation.
What about the Essence Depleter? Is that too slow?
I think so. I mean,
Couple activations a turn goes a long way.
Yeah,
Just
that's
kinda
true.
Locks him into a pattern, though, that he might not be able to.
right. The
get
real
out of.
trouble is just, feeling so pressured to keep using his mana to defend himself and not really getting up to those big threats. So he is at 7 mana here. He could, Essence Depleter and Drain twice. Helps keep him afloat a little bit.
Shuei's going to fall down to 12 here. And there it is, Essence Depleter. He's got 2 activations sitting in the bank there to put him up to 8. It also can block the Incubator Drone. And it looks like the Incubator Drone is actually going to get flying here.
Yeah,
isn't it?
so Shuhei is representing an attack for 7 here. So Nathan can survive it, but he's going to be at 1 life and staring down so many different threats that could kill him.
All right, it looks like Mate Zadelkai's won game 1 against Andrew Brown. Even though Andrew Brown had an Endbringer in play. Not a problem for Big Z as he picks up game 1.
And looks like Shuhei's picked up a copy of Stasis Snare here. Just goes ahead and uses it on that Essence Depleter. And that's going to leave Nathan in an almost impossible spot here. Let's see what he can come up with this draw step.
Yeah, facing 4 creatures. Yeah, he just gets stuck with all those cards in his hand. Shuhei Nakamura recognizing very early that he needed to play the tempo game, plays it perfectly, and picks up game 1. We'll be back right after this.
Play in Pro Tour Gauntlet events starting Wednesday on Magic Online and test drive one of the top decks from this Pro Tour. For more information, go to mtgo.com.
Welcome back to the feature match area here in Atlanta. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ian Duke. And let's check back on our back table there. Alex Bianchi versus Marcio Carvalho. Marcio's up a game
Dropped one.
as we jump in here.
Let me just think. I think you dropped it. I played this return. Turn 2, turn 3, bounce. I don't know, but I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I know. I'm taking it, but I really don't know, to be honest.
Sorry, can I double check my test, please?
I'm at 420.
Oh, okay. You can upload these notes.
Looks like our life totals aren't quite right. I think Marcio's at 4. Yeah, there we go. So Alex Bianchi looks like he's been ahead this entire game. And maybe is on the verge of finishing off Marcio. He can't come up with something pretty darn impressive here. Boulder salvo. It was pretty impressive. Warden of Geometries with Vigilance is going to get in there. Only 2 power back. Bianchi's thinking, at least posturing that he has vines. I think he might actually have it. Decides not to use it there. No land drop for the turn here. Meaning that Predator is going to stay at a lowly 2-2. Oh, press into service?
Yikes.
Ugh. And he's going to steal the Maw of Kozilek, which is going to set up a brutal attack here. And in fact, lethal. If Marcio's at 4, those are all 2 power.
4.
Go to damage.
You're at 4, right? I'm at 4.
So if you took 4,
A little bit of showmanship there. I
maybe
guess.
so. So Alex Bianchi picks up that one, and he's going to tie that up at 1 game apiece, and they're going to head to game 3. So we'll keep an eye on that in the background here. You can see our feature match area there on the bottom. That's Andrew Brown, who is playing Matej Zadokai. I can tell you that our King of the Hill match is still going. Players are just away from the table for a moment, but that match is ongoing between Frank Lepore and Bartolomei Lewandowski. So more updates there too. So as we jump in once again, Andrew Brown had an Endbringer in play in game 1. It wasn't enough. Matej Zadokai defeated an Endbringer here to win the first game and is now working his way through how to take down a Void Attendant and a Vampire Envoy. See a Boulder salvo in hand for Big Z here, which is a nice start. He's also got a Core Scythe Master, which he could do both. He's going to go with Cliffside Lookout instead. And Boulder Salvo to kill the Envoy. It works, too. And since he did play an ally, that means his Spawnbinder Mage can tap down the Void Attendant, and that's going to clear the way for 6 damage here from Matej. So nice sequencing there. And a big hit of damage. So Andrew Brown's going to be at 14 life, and Matej is at 20 here. And wow, Radiant Flames here. Jeez. Was he able to cast it for 3? Or was it just 2? It was just 2.
Yeah, just 2 there.
And Matej is going to use a Brute Strength to save his Flame Seeker.
Any good?
Names.
Needs.
Scythe Master go.
Enter combat.
Sure.
No attacks.
follow up with the Chijuru Path Warden as we see our main table still finishing up their mulligans. We'll jump back once they're ready. Matei is going to tap down that Path Warden using his Spawnbinder Mage on end step. That's what he was signaling there by pointing to it. Does he have a play here? Was that a planar outburst for Matei? I'm going to have to dig up a deck list here because I got to know if he's got a planar outburst.
So in the meantime, that Spawnbinder Mage just locking down to Drew Path Warden.
Confirmo, by the way.
Oh, wow.
That might explain part of how he beat a an Endbringer in the first game. Well, drawing planar outburst is very interesting because, you know, we saw last turn he just threw out the Scythe Master there. He's just, you know, trying to build out his board. And now all of a sudden he kind of wants to trick Andrew Brown into building out his board so he can get him.
Yeah, and Matei's in a decent spot to do that with the Spawnbinder Mage just kind of keeping that Tajuru Path Warden frustrated. Andrew Brown, you know, is likely to commit more.
All right, let's jump up to our front table. We'll let Matei work his way through this one against Andrew Brown, see if he can maximize on that planar outburst. But our main match is underway. Shuhei Nakamura up a game, and we're in the early stages here. You can see a Vampire Envoy is the only non-land permanent on the battlefield here. It's for Nathan Holiday, but it's going to get swept away. So back on top of the library it goes. And a Void Attendant. It's going to follow up for Holiday. Incubator Drone is the play for Shuhei Nakamura. He's going to pass. And the Vampire Envoy off the top of the deck, and no land drop there for Holiday. So he redraws the Vampire Envoy, immediately plays it and passes the turn. Gravity Negator for Nakamura as he starts to move forward with his game plan.
Nakamura with a pretty stacked hand here. He's sitting on...
Jeez.
Yeah.
Is he a Reflector Mage?
Reflector Mage, Eldrazi Displacer, and Stasis Snare, among others.
Wow, this is so brutal too for Holiday because, like, since he's missing land drops, there's a decent chance that his only good play next turn would be to replay that Envoy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Reflector Mage says, nah.
It's almost the same story as the last game with Holiday just...
Yeah, missing mana left and right here.
Yeah, in his deck that wants to get up to, 7, 8, 9 mana.
By the way, Reflector Mage, just wanted to say thanks. Ian.
You're welcome, Marshall.
Ian is the lead developer of this set. Probably the person most responsible for that. So
Definitely.
I'm indebted to you, friend. I love that card. Yeah, look at this hand from Holiday. It's just full of stuff, and he just can't get anything moving forward to start deploying threats at a quick rate here.
Thankfully for Holiday, it looks like he did pick up a swamp, so he will make a little headway in the mana department. And especially important, he will have a play other than the Vampire Envoy.
Yeah, it's an Oblivion Strike to take out the Gravity Negator. So a strong play, in fact.
Yeah.
As he has now stabilized this board fully. Oof, that was a nice... That swamp was...
Yeah, really,
thumbs
really
up.
important there.
Yeah. He's not going to like what he sees here, though. As we might see some things start getting displaced here pretty quickly. And is Shuhei really going to set up this combo?
Reflector Mage Eldrazi Displacer.
That's the one.
That is quite the combo.
It's online.
So fortunately for Holiday, I do see an out for him. Looks like he has, well, maybe not actually.
What does he have?
Well, he did draw an extra land here, and he has natural connection, so he can start getting his mana up a bit. And he does have a Pulse of Marasa to gain him some time. So he can maybe get to a spot where he's playing a couple creatures per turn. But yeah, it looks like, I guess, Shuhei does have actually three sources of colorless mana and 6 mana sources. So he could actually double Reflector Mage every turn for the rest of the game. So
Are you serious?
That's gonna put things in a really bad spot for Nathan Holiday.
Oh my goodness. Are we really going to see this? All right, so he decided to go with the Eyeless Watcher. That is the worst thing to bounce.
Yeah, that at least lets him get a little bit of value each turn if he does need to keep replaying his creatures.
Yeah, should be fine.
He says, okay, fine, that's fine. End step, Reflector Mage your Void Attendant. And he's not actually going to do both until next turn anyway, because it costs 3. But now he does have that online. He can activate that combo 2 times per turn now.
So looking through Holiday's deck, it looks like Demon's Grasp is the card he'd really like to see here.
Take down that Displacer. Vampire Envoy here for Holiday. Sure. Go. Bounce the Envoy. And that was so much fun. We'll do it again. I think that Nathan's trying to figure out, well, when can I actually recast this since this is happening on Nathan's turn? A little bit weird for Reflector Mage, right? Since it's a creature, it normally comes down on your opponent's turn.
This is pretty savage here, Marshall. This makes me want to build a constructed deck here and get this going. What do you say?
I'm in.
Until my next turn.
You're a big Mana War fan, right?
Let's brew. Oh, you bet I am. So the way that Reflector Mage is worded, it says that creature's owner can't cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. Now, this was on Nathan Holiday's end step. So it is now Shuhei's next turn. So he actually can recast them, right?
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
Since Shuhei's next turn has happened. Another update here. Andrew Brown does defeat Matej Zadelkai in that game 2 that we were watching. The Planar Outburst was good. Ulamog was better.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So things getting pretty spicy in the feature match area here in our last round of Limited. More news from the feature match area. Frank Lepore is our new King of the Hill. He had a Defiant Bloodlord and Felidar Sovereign going.
Yikes.
Little 6 into 7.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
And he defeats Bartolome Lewandowski to take that King of the Hill and improve to 10-1. All right, we see this Eldrazi Displacer Reflector Mage thing going on still. Return the Void Attendant. Now, either way, you know, Shuhei does seem to have a really nice little lock going on this game, but it doesn't mean that he gets to just win the game immediately, right? He still has to find enough mana to develop out his board and find something that start attacking.
Yeah, the thing is, Shuhei's spending 3 mana every time he wants to bounce back a creature, and Nathan Holiday has a bunch of different 3 mana cost creatures. So they're kind of playing this like juggling game, where Nathan is just replaying whichever creatures he's allowed to each turn, and Shuhei's sending them back. But both players tying up all their available mana each turn, not making too much headway on the board. Looks like Shuhei kind of taking a turn off here to deploy a couple more threats. Probably wise. It makes the Reflector Mage a lot more valuable when you're ahead on board and can start making profitable attacks.
There's a stasis snare as well now for Nakamura. And he's got one each of those colorless instants as well. He's got a Warping Whale and a Spatial Contortion. But he's content to just sit on his combo here. Vile Redeemer there on end step. Nathan Holiday has certainly found his mana here, and he's just trying to build out a board big enough to actually start getting some work done. But that Displacer is doing a lot more than just displacing here. Interesting. This is getting a little awkward here for Shuhei. This turn for Nathan Holiday was pretty big too. He's now got an Oran Reef Invoker and a Kozilek's Translator as well.
Yeah, somehow despite Shuhei's best efforts, Nathan Holiday's board is getting larger and larger.
I understand. Yeah.
And again, if Nathan can ever find that Demon's Grasp, he's going to be in a much, much better position here.
We've got a real game here. Shuhei certainly has the advantage with that combo that he's assembled. All right, now this could be the start of that turn here. He's going to take a turn off. And he's going to set up a Ruin Processor here that can start getting in for big chunks of damage. And, you know, the default play, of course, would be to put some type of multiple block in front of it, but the Displacer can really mess with that. On that back table that we checked in on briefly earlier, Alex Bianchi has defeated Marcio Carvalho 2-1. So Bianchi goes 6-0 in draft, but he's going to have a really strong performance in Modern to put up a great finish here, as he's already picked up 4 losses from yesterday. Grave Birthing now from Holiday. Okay, nice board state.
Yep.
A lot of creatures.
But finally, we're ready to see some attacking here. In comes the Ruin Processor. And this is a super safe attack from Shuhei. He has the Displacer shenanigans as well as Warping Whale and Spatial Contortion. So
Yeah, he can really mess with what Holiday's doing. So Shuhei has started now main phasing his Eldrazi Displacer activations on his Reflector Mage, which of course brings the Reflector Mage tapped. Before he was doing it on Nathan's end step, and so he was just shortcutting it, not coming in to play tapped since he was about to untap anyway, but does bring it back in tapped in case that matters. There's a culling drone, and once again, Kozilek's Translator hits the battlefield. And you can have that one right back in your hand. Thank you very much. But wait, there's more.
So Shuhei now up to 3 sources of colorless mana and 9 total lands. So that's sending 3 creatures back every turn.
Interestingly, I think he just drew a Gravity Negator off the top as well. And that could shorten this clock down even further, as these chump blocks that Nathan Holiday's able to make at the moment will no longer be possible.
Yeah, black-green decks generally not known for holding off flyers that well, unless you have things like Netcaster Spider or Seed Guardian. Vampire Envoy can do a little bit of that, but I think this Displacer Mage, or Displacer Reflector Mage combo, I should say.
I think that's what we'll call our deck, though.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
There we go. We got the name for it now too.
Love that. And it's going to be a Birthing Hulk. Yeah, so that Gravity Negator looking pretty important here, because it is going to take forever for Shuhei to work through all these creatures on the ground. And so he's going to just get the creatures in the air out of the way here.
Yeah, I mean, Holiday was looking like he found a little bit of traction there in terms of playing creatures that come with Scions, and just each time he's cycling through them, getting, building up some more Scion tokens in the battlefield. But yep, now this Gravity Negator, literally turning this game upside down.
You mentioned it earlier. He needed to find that Demon's Grasp. He had to find it, within this time frame, and he just hasn't been able to find it.
Yeah, and the trouble is Demon's Grasp is a sorcery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Warping Whale, one of the modes, is counter-target sorcery spell. So not only does he need the Demon's Grasp, but he also needs to find a window of opportunity where Shuhei doesn't have 2 mana available, and that's looking harder and harder as the game progresses.
I'll tell you what, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
I think at that stage of the game, I think there were a couple turns in there where Shuhei was tapping out and he could have maneuvered it, but
Shuhei just won't leave that window open anymore. There's no incentive for him to do so. Pass the turn back to you. And this one's going to be over very quickly. He's going to just bounce one of the Scions here.
And interestingly, Shuhei could actually even use Spatial Contortion to get in 3 extra damage.
He could just win right here.
Yeah, he could. There's no...
Is there a risk to that? I mean...
Not a huge amount of risk, but there's also no real reason for Shuhei to take any risk whatsoever. I mean, he's got this game sitting pretty here, so...
And that worked out well for him. The Pulse of Marasa would have made that play moot anyway.
Yeah, great point.
Pulse is going to jump Nathan Holliday's life total back up to 7. And normally you'd be really happy to get to this stage of the game and have 7 cards in hand, but that is not going to do it, as Shuhei's the one that put them all there, assembles the combo early and protects it the whole way through. Nathan Holliday never able to break it up, and Shuhei Nakamura goes 6-0 in draft and is 9-2 here at the PT.
Yeah, very impressive.
He always is, you know, very consistent. All right, we're going to jump back over to our other match here, Andrew Brown versus Matej Zadelkai. And, yeah, so you see all those creatures in the graveyards?
I can think of one reason
just
why.
got there, yeah. So those are planar. So this was a planar outburst just a moment before we joined the table here to completely clear everything up. So now what we're viewing is the aftermath. We're watching the players try to rebuild their boards, reestablish board dominance, and get going. And it looks like Matej's decided that since he has not much else going on here, he's going to just go ahead and get rid of a Scion Summoner with an Isolation Zone and start crunching in there with a Recruit. And he's got 1 turn, and that does it. Matej Zadelkai wins the game 2-1 and improves to 9-2, joining Andrew Brown at 9-2, in fact, for that one. So that match was great. We only got to watch a little bit of it, but there were some haymakers there, right? We heard about Endbringers. We heard about Planar Outbursts, Ulamogs.
Yeah, those are some pretty cool decks.
So some great stuff there. There was also a Serpentine Spike somewhere in there for good measure. So lots of big stuff from the feature match area. Of course, that is going to do it for the limited portion of our tournament. That was round 3 of the second draft.
Okay.
And so that's it for that. That means Modern all the way through here until we cut to a top 8 later on today. We're going to bring you 5 rounds of Modern, starting with the next round of action coming up pretty shortly here too. So I know, for those of you Constructed fans who are waiting to see some of this, the new innovations, and there have been new innovations in Modern brought out here at the Pro Tour. It won't be too long until you have them.
Yeah, let's just say we haven't seen our last Eldrazi Sky Spawner of the tournament.
Yeah, that's true. And if you like Eldrazi in general, you are in for a treat. We're going to have quite a few of those on camera as well. That, again, will do it, though, for the limited portion. Anything stand out to you about draft?
It was just awesome for me to see, a format that I worked on coming into fruition here. A lot of really cool decks there. I loved Shuhei's blue-white colorless deck. That was pretty awesome to see. A lot of awesome haymakers. Ulamog came out, Planar Outburst. So, yeah, it looks really exciting.
Okay, well, let's send it over to the news desk and Rich Hagan.
Thanks very much to Marshall and Ian. Now, just before we leave Limited behind, we know that you enjoy watching the matches and you learn as you go from different plays on different turns in the matches. But we wanted to see if we could give you an overview of Limited from what we've learned. Now, this is kind of really tough when the pros, obviously, they don't want to reveal all their testing information when they're sitting there going, well, we've worked really hard. We've done 20, 25, 30 drafts to arrive at our knowledge of the format. And at that point, they certainly don't want to do a live interview with you. But we said, well, look, what if you come in the night before the Pro Tour? We'll make sure you're the only one anywhere near the cameras so no one can hear you, and we'll lock it in a vault until the limited rounds are over. And they went, well, actually, that sounds kind of fine. So that meant that the people we interviewed on Thursday were willing to talk to us really well and truly on the record about what this limited format is all about. I recommend pen and paper at the ready for the next 12 or so minutes, because you are going to learn a ton about this limited format from some of the best players in the game, starting now.
I am here with Joel Larson. I need to know how to draft this format. It's a couple of days before the Pro Tour. Give it to us. What do you think your big picture view on this limited format is?
I think this format, if you have drafted off of the Gatewatch, Battlefield Sungar before, it has changed dramatically in many ways. First off, there's a new color in the sense of waste mana and generic mana. So I think the first thing you have to realize is what color combinations goes well with the colorless mana and what color combination doesn't. For example, we have white-red, green-white, blue-red sometimes, doesn't want it at all. And there's other decks like blue-black, green-black, we have blue-white sometimes and blue-green that really wants it. So you need to know where you are and when to be open for taking colors cards and when not to. I think that's the biggest challenge of this limited format.
Which are your favorite archetypes to draft? If you could sit down and I could tell you you're going to get these 2 colors, which ones would you pick?
I think my highest pick is black-white. It's also a very good archetype to start with because it kind of drafts itself. It's quite defensive and you draft around the allies and try to stabilize all the time.
Using cohort?
Using cohort, most likely.
Blue-black control? Can I draft that?
Hate it. I think it's actually the worst archetype in the format.
Why do you not like it?
The reason being it's quite hard to have spells that gains you attrition in this format. And also the smaller creatures doesn't really go that well because the boards build up better. Cards like Benthic Infiltrator and so on doesn't really make it anymore. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's not so good anymore.
Okay, thanks, you.
Yeah.
I am here with World Magic Cup champion Andrea Mengucci. We're talking limited. Andrea, what is your strategy for this new Oath of the Gatewatch limited format when you're drafting?
We discussed a lot about this, and there are like 2 big factions, which are allies against Eldrazi. And they very hard you play like both faction in the same deck. So there are basically kind of many decks that you can play, like black-white allies, red-white allies, or even like playing 3 color is not that hard. Like you play the multicolors card. So you can get basically, it's an aggressive deck, the ally decks. And then you have this Eldrazi deck that, meanwhile, last Battle for Zendikar is all about big Eldrazi. In this new set, we have a lot of small Eldrazi, like Blinding Drone, I think it's the captain, let's call him. Because it's a very powerful card, it's the best blue common, and just as it's so versatile, it's like the best card. And you have to draft around it, meaning that you have to take colorless land or colorless sources like Hedron Crawler, Cultivator Drone, or Kozilek 3/5. So basically, like while the ally deck can avoid the colorless lands, the blue decks, the Eldrazi deck, needs them. Red-black also, like the Grixis Shell, let's say, needs them. So, like we have the 6th color, let's call it waste, no? Colorless. That requires you to pick the lands quite high, like Unknown Shores or the other one.
Crumbling Vestige.
Crumbling Vestige, or even the 3rd one, and I don't know the name now. But they are very important in the Grixis shell, usually. So you have to understand when you need to pick them over something else. Like Unknown Shores can be easily a first pick in Pack 2 if you already are blue-black and you don't have enough colorless land to fuel your Blinding Drone or your black cards that needs the colorless source. And one very interesting color, in my opinion, is green. Because green can be drafted in 2 different ways, totally different ways. The aggro green with Saddleback Lagak and support. Saddleback Lagak, which is the best common in that archetype. Or the controlled green, which like changes, the pick order changes totally because you want more like spiders, like the Netcaster Spider, the Seed Guardian, you know, defensive creatures, and eventually the 5/4 Trample, Vigilance, Birthing Hulk, stuff like that. So green is very interesting.
So one final thought real quick. If you get to choose what archetype you're going to be in the draft, what would it be?
I like green, so probably green-white support I like the most.
All right, there you go. Andrea Mengucci on drafting this new format.
All right, I am here with Seth Manfield. Seth, I just qualified for this Pro Tour yesterday. I call you on the phone on my way to the airport, and I need to know about the limited format. What do you tell me?
Well, I say, first of all, congratulations for qualifying, man. But, you know, it's not easy to do that. But I would bet that you weren't playing limited when you qualified, and a lot of people don't necessarily play as much limited as constructed. So I think going into a new limited format like this, a lot of people haven't played with Oath of the Gatewatch, and they played with Battle for Zendikar, but this is only one pack of Battle, and it's the last pack when you're drafting. So you really want to focus on Oath and knowing what the best commons are in the set, what are the best removal spells, like Oblivion Strike, Isolation Zone, and their respective colors, and knowing which colors you like. For starters, personally, I like white the best. I think white's the best color. And then knowing what synergies there are, like the ally synergies, the cohort synergies, how powerful those are, because there were ally synergies come into play triggers in Battle for Zendikar, but cohort's a new ability, and just sort of figuring out how great that ability is and what allies are in the various colors. Like maybe there's one blue ally, one green ally, but you're more looking for a black-white deck with just a bunch of allies and just saying, you know what, I see an ally, I'm taking it, I'm taking it, I'm taking it, and just continuing on. You'll be pretty in pretty good shape, I think, at the Pro Tour if you do that.
Are there any traps that come to mind?
I think that I really like the colorless, like taking the colorless lands. There's a bunch of new wastes and the other colorless lands that produce a colorless or can help you also produce colored mana. And then there's effects that work with that, like a card like Blinding Drone or the various blue drones that help. But the problem with that is that you really need to have a focused colorless deck. A lot of times what you'll have like maybe some allies and maybe some colorless creatures, and maybe you'll have one or two of the colorless lands, but you're not really doing what you want to be doing. You really want to be one direction or the other. And I think a lot of people just fall into taking the best card out of a pack rather than just taking what's synergistic with what you're trying to do. Have an idea of what a two-color pair wants to be doing. Like, if you're going red-white, you know that you don't need to prioritize colorless lands because there's not colorless cards in the pack, so you draft accordingly. But
okay.
That's one of the traps I've seen, yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Seth.
No problem.
I'm here with reigning player of the year, Mike Sigrist, and we're going to talk about Limited. Mike, I know you think this is a pretty intricate Limited format.
Absolutely.
Which you kind of like, right?
I do.
So tell me about it.
There's a lot of different synergies and strategies you can do. Personally, I like to go to take the lands pretty highly, Unknown Shores and Holdout Settlement specifically, because it allows me to play all the powerful cards that I can get on the splash. And I like the Devoid strategies and the colorless mana symbol. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but you kind of get a free roll with those and out of the Unknown Shores and Holdout Settlement. So.
How does Crumbling Vestige fit in there?
Well, Crumbling Vestige is a lot worse because if you draw it off the top of your deck when you have like a Blinding Drone in play, you can't activate it immediately. And also, you want to be able to play your splash cards off of it, and that incentivizes you to hold it in your hand, and you don't really want to always do that.
Okay. So if you're given your druthers, what would your draft deck look like at the end of a draft?
It'll be like blue-black control. I like control decks. I always do. I very rarely draft aggro decks because they're so easy to stop, I feel like. So it'll be blue-black, mainly blue-based with Blinding Drones because you can get them a little later than the other premium commons, and splash any powerful gold cards I can get, or rares or whatever, because I think the games in this format are won by rares a lot more often than maybe before because the removal is so bad.
And you're going to go into a third color for those rares? I'm
not going to go into the third color, but if I'm like blue-black, I'll be able to splash the Balith Null, I believe it's called, the 4/5 that gets back 2 creatures.
Null Drifter.
Yeah. And it has such a big impact on the game in this format because it's just a lot of 1-for-1s and creatures, and then there's the support cards and stuff. But if you have a much bigger creature than them, then the support is not that useful.
What common do you want to see when you open your pack more than any other common?
Oblivion Strike.
No question?
No question. Yeah, it's splashable. It's the most efficient removal spell in the format. I think if there's not Nissa's Judgment is close. That's still something I'm not sure which one's better, but I prefer being black. So Oblivion Strike, no questions asked.
All right. He's not the player of the year for no reason. You should listen to him.
All right, I am here with Justin Cohen. Justin, welcome. I qualified for the Pro Tour yesterday. You might not know this. And I call you on the phone, and I'm like, I haven't drafted. Tell me about this draft format.
Well, you're going to get different answers depending on whether you drafted the previous format with BFC. I think that's the most interesting thing that's going on with this format. The last format was interesting, but it had some issues, had some color pie issues. And the big story of Oath is how much it changed the evaluations of everything that was in the first set. All of the best stuff from the first set basically got a lot worse. And a lot of the unplayables from the first set got far, far better. And that's the main story, is learning what stuff shifted around and where you want to be now.
What are some of the cards that went from, like, out of battle maybe, that went from, like, overlookable to good?
So basically, the story of Battle was all about synergies, and you wanted cards that interacted with each other well and assembled into things that were more powerful than their individual components. Things like the Devoid mechanic, things like ingest and processing. You wanted to get like as much of that stuff as you can and add it together. Now, because Oath doesn't really support that stuff very heavily, all of that stuff that exists in the first pack is much, much worse because you just can't end up with a ton of it. Meanwhile, the cards in Pack 1, like Brood Hunter Worm, for example, which is a 4/3 for 4, which would routinely go last pick because it doesn't have synergy with anything, but it's actually just a fine rate on a limited card in the right format, and this is now the right format. So that's a card that I'm happy to play now. Like 4/3 for 4 is just good numbers. Combat Tricks got far, far better because creatures are, instead of, kind of small utility creatures that were doing their synergy thing, and then big Eldrazi monsters, which Combat Tricks don't relevantly interact with that kind of a combat. Now you have similar sized creatures like Brood Hunter Worms, 4/4s, 3/3s that are getting into combat with each other, and Combat Tricks make a difference.
Any traps? Was there anything that you tried out and it maybe looked good and then ended up being not so good?
Yeah, I would say I tried to make the Surge thing work a couple of different ways, pushing it really hard, and it can work. It's not that it can't work, but your odds are low enough that it's generally not worth trying unless it just lines up perfectly the whole way down and it's never in question. If there's a question, you should probably be off of it.
Okay. Hey, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. All right, so thanks very much to all our limited interviewees there. We put a bow on the limited format, and where does that leave us in terms of our master scoreboard? Because it's modern all the way now. Who has handicapped themselves to be in the best position to make the top 8? Let's take a look at our lunchtime leaderboard here on day 2. Our co-leaders are Frank Lepore of the United States and Jason Chung of New Zealand at 10 and 1. A slew of 9-2s begin with Bart Lewandowski. Then you've got Matej Zadelkai from Slovakia, Shuhei Nakamura of Japan. The Americans, Paul Chion, William Jensen, Mike Sigrist, Andrew Brown, Louis Scott Vargas, and Sam Pardy. Back to Japan, Yuya Watanabe, the number 13 ranked player. And again from Slovakia, Even Flock, right in the mix. Martin Muller begins the tie breaks of the 8 and 3s. Everyone on 8 and 3 very much still in contention for top 8. If we go on to our next sheet, 21 through 40, let's show you who else is in contention. Everyone there still has their Pro Tour destiny in their own hands, whether that's the number 1 ranked player, Owen Turtenwald, whether that is Hall of Famer Frank Karsten, whether that's Canada's Pascal Maynard. Patrick Dickman of Germany has survived the limited and is undefeated in modern. He's playing Affinity. Jeremy Desani, a chance for him to get back to a top 8. Emmanuel Gershenson, the same. Everyone there still in contention, plus probably about a dozen more or so that can realistically make it. Once you hit the 4th loss, well, you're in trouble, especially if you've already had it. So that's where we are here on the leaderboard. And now we're going to turn our attention away from Limited and focus in on Oath of the Gatewatch, because it's a small set, but boy, does it pack a punch. It's all over Modern, and it's all over your draft tables right now, and your constructed as well. So why don't we go back to Seattle, to the home of Wizards of the Coast. It's time for part 2 of Inside R&D.
One Titan, very bad news. But 2 Titans, things are about to get really weird.
In Battle for Zendikar, almost all of the Eldrazi we saw were related to Ulamog, the Eldrazi Titan who focuses most on consumption, hunger, just the devouring of matter. Well, in Oath of the Gatewatch, we get Kozilek.
Kozilek is a little bit different. Kozilek is the great distortion. Where Kozilek goes, reality distorts. The things you take for granted, that gravity will work, those things go sideways. Perception gets altered. People you thought were your friends look like your enemies. Just everything that you kind of thought were these foundational, solid elements of reality just fall to pieces.
Kozilek is completely and utterly warping reality. Everything is not what it seems. He can mutate the laws of physics. Gravity doesn't work the same. You can be pulled up apart off the ground and don't know where your next step is going to be. You can, your head can be on one side of like the battlefield and your legs on the other side of the battlefield, and you don't know how that happened, and you're probably not gonna last too long that way.
Okay, so we started Oath of the Gatewatch, and what we knew was we'd introduced Ulamog in Battle for Zendikar, and what we knew was it was time to introduce Kozilek. You see, he was buried underground, he wasn't actually gone. And so the beginning of the design was all about how do we bring Kozilek to life.
Maybe you're playing a ramp deck and you've just emptied your hand playing your last land that you need to cast Kozilek, and now you can kind of scoop back up a full grip of 7 cards. We thought was pretty awesome, and it also kept it playing in the same space as the original Kozilek, but not obviously stronger or weaker.
When we were designing the Kozilek mechanic, the mechanic for Kozilek's brood lineage, we threw lots and lots of ideas up on the whiteboard, and none of them really felt like they were big enough to fill a whole mechanic. You know, we couldn't make 6 commons with each of these mechanics. They just seemed like a card or maybe 2 cards. And so we took all of those things and we collected them together and we said, okay, these are special abilities that belong to Kozilek here, and you can only get them if you spend colorless mana. So you need mana generated by a Soul Ring or a Mind Stone or a Wastes, which is our new basic land that generates colorless mana, in order to use these abilities.
So if you notice in a mana cost, when you see like a 1 in a circle, that means you can use any mana you want. It could be colored mana, colorless mana, we don't care. It could be any mana you want. When you see 1 in a rules text box after the colon, that means I'm adding 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. So in one case, it means 1 of any color, it's generic mana. In the other case, it means 1 colorless mana, it's colorless. Those aren't the same thing, but we've always represented them as being the same thing. But we now made spells in which we had mana costs that had a 1 with a circle that meant colorless. It didn't mean any color. So, okay, we can't do that. We can't have one thing mean 2 things in the same place. So we realized we needed to make a brand new mana symbol.
Okay, so there's a new mana symbol in Oath of the Gatewatch. It kind of looks like a curved diamond. It's the colorless mana symbol. Call it C mana for short, what have you. Now, it's not really a new thing. You've been adding colorless mana to your mana pool for years. We're just kind of changing the system up a little bit. Now, if you see a numeric symbol, like a 1, a 2, a 3, or an X, that's a cost. That's something you have to pay. And you can pay it with any kind of mana. White mana, blue mana, colorless mana, doesn't matter. If you see the colorless mana symbol, that represents not only the colorless mana that you add to your pool, but also a cost that you can pay only with colorless mana. So it's kind of a new thing for Oath of the Gatewatch, is those costs.
So one of the things that we've been trying to do forever is a basic land that is colorless. Now there's 2 different reasons why people want it. One is the berries land reason, which is the idea of taking something like domain and getting it to 6. The other reason people want it is for commander, that if you want to play a colorless commander, it is really, really hard because you don't have any basic land that you're allowed to put in your deck. We weren't able to solve the first one. Rules-wise, it's just too difficult, so your domain doesn't get to go to 6. But we were able to solve the second one. And so wastes, finally, there's another basic land. Commander players, you're welcome. And I think it'll add a little something new to the game.
When design told us that was the plan, that they needed this wastes card, we came back at them and said, I think we need 2. We don't do a lot of art variations anymore. We haven't done that in a long time, but in this set you will see that there are 2 pieces of art for wastes. One that has the chalky, spongy bone dust of Ulamog's corruption pattern after he's been feeding, and the other that has the square spiral oil sheen bismuth whatever of Kozilek's corruption pattern after he's been through an area.
One of the cool things we got to do in Oath of the Gatewatch in terms of the art and kind of showing the presence of Kozilek as he emerged on the scene was that his lineage always showed up underground in Battle for Zendikar. If you look at Herald of Kozilek or Kozilek's Channeler, they're always underground. And in Oath of the Gatewatch, you see them out in the open and it just really loudly says, Kozilek is here.
So design handed the file over to development, and we asked them, what is Kozilek all about? And we were told, he's weird? And kind of had to go from there. So what we had were these little pockets of different kind of cards with strange abilities, all united under this colorless mana mechanic. And so you'll see in causeless influence as opposed to Ulamog from the last set, there's quite a bit of odd stuff happening in the set in little pockets. You'll see little tiny themes spring up in your limited decks or your constructed decks that work together in ways you won't even expect.
Inverter of Truths is a really interesting mythic. Like, on the surface, seems like you're getting a 6/6 flyer for 4 mana, but with a serious drawback of exiling your whole library. But in a lot of situations, that can be an upside. If your graveyard is stocked full of goodies, you kind of want to draw cards from your graveyard rather than your library.
We did a few cards like Bearer of Silence. Now this is a card that you cast, and when you cast it, you get the additional ability to pay a little bit more mana to get an additional effect. Now this is a little different than how we've done things in the past. This isn't a part of the spell, this is just a free trigger that you get that's pretty much unstoppable. It's to help show that Eldrazi are a little more difficult to deal with than your average creature.
The Matter Reshaper is an example of a Kozilek card that sort of bends or defies what laws of physics may be. So it starts as a 3/2, but when it dies it actually will change into something else. It's part of the Eldrazi being inscrutable, is you don't actually know what should happen when Eldrazi are involved.
So now you're drafting Oath of the Gatewatch, Oath of the Gatewatch, Battle for Zendikar. But we haven't forgotten about all those cards in your Battle for Zendikar pack. And even though there are no cards with the actual ingest mechanic in Oath of the Gatewatch, we still wanted to support that strategy. So by the time you get around to your Battle for Zendikar pack, some cards could be exiled. You might have some cards that can exile your opponent's cards. And that's where a card like Mind Melter comes in. It doesn't have ingest, but it's still exiling cards from your opponent's hand. So you can draft those processors that nobody else wants and really take advantage of them.
So I enjoy all of the Eldrazi that cost colorless mana in their mana cost. I think it was a really fun development process, fleshing out what does a colorless mana deck look like. And of course, when we're introducing something outside of the 5 colors, that really asks you to go out of your way to build around it, we wanted to make sure that the tools were there to build a robust deck. So we provided a bunch of different options at each different mana cost. You can kind of see there's like almost a 2, 3, 4, 5 curve with colorless Eldrazi that are there, and that's not by accident. We wanted to provide those tools because we knew, this was the first set where we're doing this, and we wanted colorless cards to be able to compete with the colored cards that you have many, many more of in Standard.
Once we decided that Sea Mana would be in the set, one of development's big goals was to make sure that you could build a Standard deck with the Sea Mana and it would be fun and powerful. So we made a lot of cards in colors, so devoid cards, that had these Sea Mana kickers. For example, Eldrazi Obligator and Bearer of Silence are 2 of the more powerful cards that help you get both a color and Sea Mana into your deck. And then there's also the pure Sea Mana cards, like Reality Smasher. That's one of the more powerful rewards. That's just a huge play at 5 mana for... The colors don't really get it. You have to really go to this colorless mana to get a card that functions like Reality Smasher.
So my hope for Oath of the Gatewatch, like my best case scenario, I'm hoping it's playing out even as you watch this video, is that the new colorless mana cards have a big splash in Standard Constructed, that all of a sudden they allow people to make a new type of deck that they've never made before, and that it will be successful on the biggest stage where Magic is played.